Thank you for being here. Thank you, Amy, Caleb, Nathan, Bitwave team co-host for planning this. This is an excellent event. Really excited to dig a little bit deeper into some of the themes that were already talked about in the first panel. We're going to talk about things like privacy and transparency. We're going to talk about security, a little bit about on-chain ops. We have some really good perspectives here because we heard from Deloitte, obviously Big Four advisor, one of the largest fintechs in the world, one of the largest custodians. Now we get somebody that's really thinking about this deeply from a blockchain perspective, and then obviously from an enterprise perspective. So we'll do some quick intros. We do have a special announcement, and then we'll jump into some of these topics. So Rich, why don't we start with you, just maybe a little bit on your background and what you're up to at Google.
Yeah, so hi, nice to meet you guys. My name is Rich Widmann. I run global strategy for our crypto team here within Google Cloud. And I think what I'm excited about today is we talked a little bit about the enterprise approach on the payment side, but we're actually going to get an opportunity to talk about the Rails and how we support developers on the Rails side of things who are building what is essentially going to be the technology that's going to power a lot of these payments. So I've been at Google for 6 years. My background's actually, I was a white collar criminal defense lawyer. So if you're a bad guy in crypto, you've stopped talking. But that's how I got into crypto. And I'm really excited about sharing a little bit about what we're working on with Howard and the team over at Aleo.
Thanks, Rich. Oh, that's very loud. Hi, guys. My name is Howard. I'm the founder of a blockchain called Aleo. We recently just launched, and I also run the Aleo Labs company, which is called Provable. We've been super excited to be working with the Google Cloud team, and especially with Rich. Today, we actually have a really exciting announcement. You guys are the first to hear about it. And it's namely that we are going to be going into a strategic partnership with Google Cloud. Give it up. And as part of this, the goal is really for us to accelerate and to develop zero-knowledge proofs, zero-knowledge technology, make it widely accessible, not just for developers, but for the entire world. We think that there's going to be an incredible opportunity here to use this technology to advance payments and specifically confidential and compliant payments. And so what does this partnership entail? Well, the first is Google, as part of this engagement, is going to be joining the Aleo network as a validator. They'll be running a validator to help increase our economic security and boost scalability. The second area that we're going to be working on is a data set integration. And so the cloud team and the Web3 team at Google Cloud has already ingested the entire Aleo blockchain. We've been spending the past few weeks working on that together. I'm very excited to say that as of today, you can go onto the Google Cloud Web3 portal, you can access it, and you can start querying the entire Aleo chain for its chain history. And we think this is going to be a huge unlock for a lot of different use cases beyond just analytics. When it comes to privacy, you need to look at things like record scanning. You need to look at things like delegated proof generation. These are all techniques that require state. And that state is something that you really need to be able to pull out of data sets. And so making that widely accessible, making that widely available for developers is something that we're very excited about. And of course, lastly, we'll be entering into collaborations to develop confidential payment systems together. And that's something that we think is going to be really, really important because right now, as many of you guys know, in Web3 and in crypto, all payments are public. Everything is public. We did $30 trillion worth of stablecoin payments in 2024, and just 0.01% of that was encrypted payments. And so this is a massive opportunity. It's a green field, and it's a new opportunity for us to be exploring together. Going further here, if the clicker will work. There we go. Why do we think this matters for developers? Well, first off, as you guys know, a chain is only as successful as it is usable. And so we want to make sure that tooling is widely available for developers to be building on us. But secondly is what Google is offering with their Access VMs are 10% faster than what we were able to get from AWS's Graviton VMs. And so that's something that we think is a huge milestone because, as you guys may know, zero-knowledge proofs are very early. It's cutting-edge technology, and it's only in the past decade that ZK has become fast enough, performant enough to actually run on modern CPUs. And so we're always looking for the fastest compute, the fastest architecture, and these ARM-based Axiom VMs are absolutely faster than what's currently available in the industry. And of course, lastly, we want to support builders. And so that's where the grant opportunities with Google Cloud credits for Web3 startups is something that we're going to be pushing and announcing today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rich to talk through the rest of these slides here.
Yeah, so maybe we'll just go to we can start with that one. So I think there's really two major themes that hopefully you guys are taking away from this event entirely, right? Which is, the last panel was a lot of discussions from folks who are, leaders in finance, leaders in product, leaders in the consulting space, who are really thinking about the operational lift that's required from senior executives and board members when it comes to adopting stablecoin payments. And that's all very important stuff, right? If your board is not aligned with getting into the crypto space or understanding stablecoins, then you're going to have a really hard time pushing through initiatives within any company. But the other part of the dialogue, and it's one that we only get to talk about rarely, is really the developer part of it. So Smith alluded to this earlier, like within these companies, right? PayPal, Google, Deloitte, there are technical folks who are going to be responsible for executing on the vision of making crypto payments a reality. And those folks are largely going to be looking for technology and tools that makes this an easier, lighter lift. And hint, hint, they are not necessarily crypto native folks. And so our point of view and why we think this partnership is really special is that it really rounds out the other part of that story, the second theme, which is how do we make the deployment of these technologies as seamless and as simple as some of the things that already exist within traditional payment networks and within traditional back office finance technologies today. So I think there's something really unique here about the ZK narrative, and it's one that we've been focused on. Actually, we met Howard and the team at a Google-led research summit focused specifically on ZK applications. And one of the things that we notice is that blockchain transparency is good for certain applications, but it has made many large corporates very nervous about getting into the ecosystem, especially when you talk about transparency of on-chain transactions. And so for us, we think that this is one of the big rocks. We know it's one of the big rocks based on our own work, having accepted stablecoin as payment. And so we're really excited to round out the other part of the story. There's another slide here, I think. I actually like this slide. So this is just an example of, you can tell I'm going live here a little, but this is an example of the data sets that we have live today. We'll go to the next one because I think for this audience, the most important thing is where can you see these data sets? So of all the large tech companies that are out there, frankly, of any really large enterprise, we're the only one with a Web3 specific or crypto specific landing page. And it's designed really for what I would say are crypto native as well as crypto curious developers. And so just to give you some stats, right, this page is getting over 2 million unique clicks on a 30-day basis. We support a number of faucets across a number of the major layer ones. Some of them are getting upwards of 50,000 drips a day. And so if you're a developer in the audience, this is obviously music to your ears because it's oftentimes very hard to get access to this infrastructure. And so we're really excited to be working with the Aleo team to bring the data sets into that portal for usage for free for the developer community and beyond.
And just to call out with these stats here, this is on Looker, which is a part of the Google Cloud offerings. And this took our team one afternoon to set up. So it was incredibly simple once the data was ingested and available in BigQuery. And so we think this is going to be a really, really nice unlock for developers that are building on Aleo.
Awesome.
All right, guys. This is exciting stuff. Honored to have you announce it here at Payments Day. We're going to dig into a little bit how Aleo actually works and these privacy components. If you guys will indulge me, we're going to see who's paying attention. We're going to do a hand raise. Raise your hand if you use Venmo. Shout out to our PayPal friends. Okay, basically everybody. Raise your hand again if you have it turned on for privacy where people can't see the peer-to-peer payments you're making. Most people. Okay. Like for me, many years, people were just seeing me like pay back for pizza on Venmo, and I just didn't have it set to private. There are probably some other people like that. Now I have it set to private. But Rich, like tee this up for us from a business perspective. For us consumers, yeah, maybe we want some privacy. We don't need people knowing about that. But from a business perspective, as a large enterprise, why does it matter? Both of you referenced like confidentiality, privacy, transparency. Why does it matter if you're Google adopting crypto payments?
Well, so if you're a publicly traded company, right, this is really important. You don't want to have data or exhausts that is sort of generally out there that allows people to sort of understand who you're receiving payments from or where those payments are going, because a lot of those engagements are subject to contract confidentiality clauses, and there's a whole bunch of implications that come from that. I think like just from a hearts and minds standpoint, which is honestly, if anybody's talking about crypto within their own corporation right now, it's really a hearts and minds discussion. It's how do you get the people who are responsible for the pay-ins and payouts to understand that this technology is an additive and that it creates parity across every function of payments. In other words, we all talk about the efficiencies of stablecoins. We talk about the speed, the lower transaction costs, et cetera. But like your compliance folks are sort of saying like, what net new risks does this create for me? Tax and accounting will ask, what net new considerations does this create for me? And so if there's a big privacy differential between stablecoin payments as they're used today versus traditional payments, that's going to be a massive delta that will serve as a roadblock for many companies to get over that. And I think it will, over time, you can mitigate some of those risks and you can do things around, wallet architecture and how you accept payments. I know we talked to the Bitwave team about that a little bit, but those are often complex workarounds. And I think Howard would probably agree that, having a default centric privacy element to payments is really important for large corporates because that's the environment they're used to dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think ironically, the more success we have of scaling that adoption, the more the privacy component can matter, right? So Howard, you've been thinking about this obviously more deeply than anyone in the room. Just talk to us about how you think about it and what you've built with Aleo and how this matters.
Sure. So I think it really comes down to privacy is fundamentally broken in crypto right now. And what I mean by that is the user journey of money in crypto is broken. Take, for example, if you want to buy an anniversary gift for your spouse, typically you can just go and buy a gift. They're not going to know much of the details about it. But if you were to use USDC today to go buy your spouse a gift, they probably know your wallet address. And so they can just go look on the blockchain and go see, when did they remember that our anniversary is coming up? 2, where did they go buy this gift? And 3, how much did they spend on my anniversary gift? Which is, oftentimes the most important question there. And so, this is where I say like it's about the UI UX of money. Privacy is a tool, but privacy is even more so a feature that is meant to make the user journey work for a lot of the payment use cases that we're exploring right now. When it comes to enterprises, a lot of companies want to pay their employees using stable coins and using the blockchain. But the problem, of course, naturally is you don't want to leak how much you're paying each employee, and you don't want your employees to be able to go on chain and go see how much their colleagues are making either, right? And this is something that is an unsolved problem with USDC, with USDT, with every stablecoin that is currently out there. And so the way that we look at this is that Aleo is a new type of L1. It's an L1 that supports private smart contracts. And what that means is that you can now deploy USDC natively, USDT natively on a chain like Aleo and actually support those use cases where you can buy gifts and not leak that data, where you can actually pay your employees and not leak payroll. And that is something that we see as complementary technology. So Aleo is not here to try to replace every L1 or L2 that's out there. It's meant to complement every L1 and L2 out there.
Yeah, this is also a problem with my shared Amazon account with my wife, right? So I need some ZK proofs in there. Can you explain, Howard, before we keep going, and we'll go on to security, but just for anybody that's not familiar with zero-knowledge proofs and how they work, maybe just explain it in a simple way for them?
Absolutely. So for those who are new to zero-knowledge proofs, the idea of a zero-knowledge proof is it's a very succinct mathematical proof that makes a claim that says, I know a secret, and I can convince you that I know this secret without revealing to you the secret. So, for instance, 10 years ago, a new blockchain came about called Zcash, and they used zero-knowledge proofs to basically make a small claim that says, I know this payment sender, receiver, and amount. I'm not going to reveal it to the entire blockchain and therefore the whole world, but I'm going to prove to you that I have made a sound transaction between this sender and this receiver, meaning I have not minted new money out of thin air and I have not deleted money out of thin air. And by doing that, you now have a public blockchain that can check that this transaction is well formed without having everyone being able to see all the details of it. And so ZK is a huge unlock for that. And the best analogy to draw is to look back 20 to 30 years ago to the early internet. Back in the day when everyone was on HTTP, the entire web was public. Everyone could see everyone's web traffic. Every website could also be man-in-the-middle attacked when it was sent to the user because it was all open data. And one of the key things that unlocked trust for e-commerce was HTTPS. By introducing encryption into the actual HTTP protocol, we were able to unlock so much for commerce, so much for finance. And right now, where we are in Web3 and in crypto is the same. Right now, all of your transaction data is out in the open. Everyone can see it. Everyone can see what's going on. And what we think about as ZK is it's this new defining piece of trust that actually allows you to encrypt your data to make it privacy preserving, confidential, and more so demonstrate compliance of your transactions so that you now can increase what is private payments and finance.
Yeah, amazing. We may come back to that at the end if we have time around, the compliance aspect once you bring in that privacy. So we'll come back to you, Howard, on security. I'd be curious, Rich, from your perspective, when you're talking about hearts and minds, right? You're winning hearts and minds at Google and different folks. What are the security challenges that come up? Like, I know you guys work with our friends at Coinbase from a custody perspective. Is it custody at first? Like, what are those security topics that make people nervous?
Yeah. So for people in this room, maybe, when we hear about the Bybit hack, we kind of are able to appropriately situate what happened and sort of say, oh, this is an anomaly, or, this is, related to a particular piece of technology that's not widely used or maybe widely used. I know in this case, it was actually pretty widely used. But there are different ways that you can custody assets, right? And so when I talk to our team on the Google side about this, they're not necessarily as read in on, oh, well, I've read all of the, security reports from the prevailing crypto hacks, and I understand the nuances and the differences about how we're custodying crypto versus how those other custody companies custody crypto. And so for us, a lot of it is really an educational exercise. It's really helping them understand, maybe first and foremost, that you should not go it alone. And that's why, we selected Coinbase as a custodian, primarily because they were able to help educate and then also provide, some level of assurance around the technology that they were using when it comes to like key management and using HSMs and other technologies that are preserving of admin keys. And so I really do think, like, from a security standpoint, this becomes, really at a very basic level, an educational exercise. And then once you get people open to the idea that, okay, now I understand this space, I feel comfortable navigating, there's some stuff that goes on over here that is, anomalous. We can mitigate those risks using certain technologies. Then you get people thinking about, what I call like above the line. They're thinking creatively, okay, well, now if we incorporate crypto payments into our backend, like, what kind of transaction fees can we save? What new revenue opportunities exist? And so that I actually think, like, all conversations really do, at least if you have a company that is, driving core business and other avenues, the biggest concern they always have is giving away the golden goose, right? Am I going to create material vulnerabilities for my core business by experimenting? And so all those conversations start from what I call below the line. How do I reduce risk? How do I reduce compliance concerns? How do I reduce security concerns? And that really just becomes an exercise in talking about what's available.
Yeah, and Rich, I don't know what you're able to share from, a scale standpoint, but I know since we were together in Nashville, obviously, like, payment volume has increased. Has that, like, increased scrutiny or changed any of those conversations or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think, like, maybe just like a little knock on other big enterprises who say they're getting into crypto payments and they haven't even figured out custody. Like, there's like an iterative approach to this, and certainly when you introduce scale, it starts to break some of these processes in a way that I think most people don't anticipate. So, our first crypto or stablecoin payment was, just over 7 figures. And by Q4, we were doing payments that were well into the tens of millions of dollars, right? And so when you start to have those kinds of flows go through a new, essentially what is a new form of payment, right? New rails, different processes. It doesn't end up in a Wells Fargo concentration account that your treasury manages. It's actually in a custodian, right? That starts to raise different questions. And I think it does raise the concern about, okay, the materiality of the risks increases, not because the risks have changed, but because if you say, well, there was a 1% chance we run into a risk, this is how we think at Google. Oh, there's only a 1% chance we'll run into this risk. Well, if you have 10 products with 1 billion users each, 1% of that number is like a really large percent. And so if you talk about trillions of dollars of payment flows that we're processing every year, 1% of $1 trillion is still a lot of money. So that's where the scale problem comes in. And it's one thing that I think is really unique about how we're thinking about it is we've been very iterative. And this has been a 3-year exercise. We started custody in 22, which is like kind of crazy because there was another custodian in the room that's no longer with us today. That was FTX. And so at that time, like, the industry was in a totally different state of mind. And I'm glad that we went through with that work with Coinbase at the time, because even though it took us a little bit to get to payments, every company that says they're going to do crypto payments, if you're a crypto person in this room and you're talking to enterprises, the first question you should ask them is, do you even have a custodian? Because there's no way they can do crypto payments or stablecoin payments or any of this without a custodian. It's like saying, I want to start processing ACH. And it's like, do you have a account? And they say no. well, then they're not serious. And so I think that's one of the areas where when we think about this and when other folks are talking to large enterprises, these questions will tell you whether they're serious about this or not.
Yeah, and I hope everybody appreciates what Rich just said, right? I mean, we talk about a lot of things that are interesting forward-looking in crypto, especially at an event like ETHDenver. We're talking about Google accepting tens of millions of dollars in payments today. So that's happening today. And obviously that's a fraction of Google's overall AR. So there's a
We'll get there.
ahead. Yeah.
It'll take time.
But that's really incredible. So glad you could share that. Howard, let's just go back to you from a security standpoint. What are you thinking about most right now?
So right now, there's been a lot of discussions about compliance. Compliance is one of the open areas that people are actively exploring, especially using ZK Tech. I actually just gave a talk 2 days ago about primitives that we think are going to be powerful for unlocking private payments, but providing the right compliance tools for developers to use. It starts, on the base layer. We offer view keys, for example, on our chain. And so for those who are intermediaries or who are third parties trying to facilitate payments, they need to have access and visibility into what's going on, right? And so view keys is one of the first primitives out there. We're also exploring and putting out there as open source tooling available 3 new types of techniques as well. So one is escrow time locks. So being able to, for example, during bridges, inspect and check what these transactions are, where they're coming from, are these sanctioned addresses, and secondly, verifiable credentials. We think that there's going to be a renaissance when it comes to decentralized ID. Right now you're already starting to see many states are exploring having age verification, having ID verification of users as they go to websites. I think that with the first iteration of what we're doing, which is called ZPass, this is going to be a stepping stone and a showcase of what's to come. I think that with governments, they're likely going to start exploring national ID cards and government issued passports that are going to have Web3 and ZK friendly primitives baked into it, so that you can now have identity verification be done kind of ad hoc. And that's something that I think is going to be incredibly powerful, because right now, when you go on the web, if you want to prove your age, you kind of have to give your age to people. What makes ZK so powerful there is that I actually don't have to reveal to you my birthday. I can prove to you that I'm over 18 without showing you that information. Similarly, I can prove to you that I'm not in an OFAC sanctioned list without giving you all my personal details. I can also prove to you my citizenship without giving you my actual citizenship. And so there's a lot of techniques there with verifiable credentials that we think are going to be really interesting. The third area is with policy engines and rules engines. And so what I mean by this is that right now, there is very few chains and very few protocols that are building private smart contracts, and because of that, this is just it's a very emergent technology. What we need is the ability to have policy engines that are going to comply with local jurisdictions and local laws, and that's something that each team is going to need to build out. Compliance is not one size fits all, and so you need private smart contracts. You need ZK smart contracts that are able to be configurable, and I think that's been one of the shortcomings that we've seen in the industry with privacy coins before us. When you look at a chain like a Zcash or a Monero, there is no private smart contracts. It's fixed, and so you just have the asset itself be private, which does enable private payments, but it does not enable the proper compliance. And so, for us, what we've been really emphasizing is that you need this type of configurable compliance so that you can actually accommodate regulators in their jurisdictions and allow companies to abide by the rules and regulations of their local jurisdictions.
Yeah, this is really interesting stuff. And I mean, we'll transition a little bit into on-chain ops here. If we get a time check, are we doing okay? Okay, we'll wrap up in a few minutes. What I'll say is Pat and I talk a lot about, right now, so there's some level of like copy and paste of TradFi payments processes into a blockchain world. That's a lot of what we're solving at Bitwave. Say, hey, I got to connect to my ERP. I need to do a penny test. I need to do KYC, things like that. But as we go and as we innovate, more of that will actually become like nascent to the chain, right? And it'll actually happen on the L1 or on the L2. So that's really interesting stuff. I think also we talk about the value transfer of the payment, and then what you're starting to do is around the value transfer, right? And something, Rich, we had talked about a while ago was around, like remittance delivery and information associated with that payments. Is that a big topic at Google as you think about those things, or what else kind of around the payment do you get into?
Yeah, I mean, it is. Full transparency, like it's a difficult problem to solve. Even not even from like a compliance standpoint, but also just from an operational standpoint. A lot of that messaging that happens in traditional payments triggers other workflows internally. So we have things that monitor for certain language in a payment message that allows us to, apply that payment appropriately to a particular customer or clear out an invoice or reconcile. And so you don't necessarily get all of that transactional information with some of the available on-chain payment methods today. And so that's, I think, going to be an area where there's a really big opportunity for that, right? There's a really big opportunity to sort of embed some of that into the messaging for stablecoin payments so that it looks what I would say is like pari passu with traditional payments in terms of the delta between, a blockchain payment and a ACH or a wire.
Yeah, and with traditional payments, we've got CCD and CTX and ISO 20022 and all these
standards, right? And there's really, I mean, the protocol itself, the rails are the standard in some way, but beyond that, I mean, it's not. There's no standards above that, right?
Sure. And what we see, obviously, we have a different a variety of folks in the audience. Somewhere like Google, you've automated that as much as possible. And in other situations, there's folks, smaller businesses, they're getting emails, they're getting remittance. How can they apply it? There's this like manual lift that if we can move that on chain, then everyone's a lot happier, more efficient. Howard, anything from like an operations standpoint that we haven't talked about that you wanted to hit on last few minutes?
So I think, right now we're very much in an early stage in the industry. Private smart contracts are just coming about. I certainly encourage people to give it a try, what we're building out, certainly with Google Cloud now that we have that available. I think it's an open conversation. I certainly welcome reaching out to every one of you and talking to you guys about what you guys are building. For me, it's we're building Rails, we're building the protocol. We want to make this as widely accessible. And so if there are pain points that you see, talk to us. We'd love to learn about it. We're trying to gather as much data as we can because a protocol is an open source tool. And this is something that is also a part of governance. And so as we evolve, it'll help us to know what's missing in a system like this. What do we need to add? What do we need to change? And it's an evolving conversation for us.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I know you guys are in hot demand, have to run to the main stage, but this has been great. If anybody wants to learn more, obviously, about what Aleo is doing, we've got a couple folks here. Definitely talk to them, try it out. If you want to know more about what Rich is doing at Google and using their Web3 tools, definitely go find him. So
just Google the Web3 portal.
Just Google it. That's all you need. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.